Having done 2 degrees in economics and having been in the financial services industry for over a decade, I realized that there are a lot of rules in the personal finance world that are frankly overrated. And then there are some other rules that are hugely underrated. So in this episode, I'm talking about a few of those rules that I believe are overrated in personal finance. And then we'll also talk about a few of the underrated sage personal finance advice. First, let's talk about the overrated personal finance rules. The first one is budgeting. And now before you judge me for that, I will tell you that I'm not asking you to live beyond your means. What, however, I have a problem with is this restrictive mindset around budgeting. This mindset around that I have to live on $7 a day. These viral TikToks around loud budgeting. I get the concept. I have the same sentiment as well. Don't live beyond your means. However, I believe that restrictive budgeting can actually backfire. You might actually come back with a vengeance and spend more on the things that you really don't value. I would much rather be aware of my spending habits and cut back on things that don't add value to my life. The second overrated thing I find is about owning a house. Almost all of us are trained since childhood to think about buying a house. However, not always does buying a house make sense. Sometimes actually renting is cheaper than buying. If you are interested in that, I will link up a video here where I talk about this very nuance of renting versus buying. So no, buying is not always the best and the right option. There are cases where renting might be cheaper. The third slightly related thing that is overrated is paying off your mortgage early. Now, I know paying off your mortgage early might mean that you are living debt-free. However, making a blanket statement like that doesn't take into account one extremely important number, interest rates. Now, if interest rates for a mortgage in the market are at 4 or 5%, and in the stock market, you are getting a return of about 7%, you are actually making a spread of about 2 to 3% just by investing your money in the market while being in debt for your mortgage. Of course, what I want to clarify is you do want to pay off your debt that has a higher interest rate attached to it, which is about 20 to 23% typically associated with credit card debt. The next extremely overrated concept, especially over the last 10 years, has been this concept of FIRE, or financially independent and retired early. I get the sentiment. All of us have this dream of sitting and doing nothing, but beyond a week or 10 days, you will get extremely bored. Now, what I don't want to take away from is that beyond a certain age, you might want to slow down, but that's not equivalent to retiring. That is actually still going to bring in some money into your bank account. You're probably just going to break even at that point if that's the life you want. But for most people, and especially for high earners, you will find it extremely difficult to sit and do nothing beyond a period of 2 weeks, maybe a month. But beyond that, it will be frustrating. It will be boring. Why not take mini vacations, mini holidays within your working life and try and figure out what you would do even if you got to that number and retired early. The next quite overrated thing I find is rebalancing your portfolio. A lot of people want to rebalance their portfolios frequently, which means that they do a lot of buying and selling of assets. This really eats into the profits that you could be making in the long run, especially considering if you are invested in real estate, the closing costs on assets are extremely high. If you are considering rebalancing your stocks and shares portfolio, there are charges associated with the buying and selling of assets as well. So if you are doing this frequently, you might lose out on the profits that you make just by incurring buying and selling costs. I have not even added to this the additional financial advisory fee, etc. that you might have to pay. So there are brokerage costs involved as well, which is why there's this 5-25 rule, which says that rebalancing between assets should occur only if an asset category has drifted from its original target by 5% absolute or 25% relative, whichever is lesser. So those were 5 pieces of personal finance advice that I personally find extremely overrated. Now coming to underrated personal finance advice. The first one is, if it sounds too good to be true, It probably is. Don't fall for get-rich-quick schemes. There are a lot of them out there. They will ask you to put your money into a hotel in Bahamas or your money in wine and art investments and so on. Now, some of them might be legit, but they are very likely targeted to extremely high net worth individuals, not for people whose net worth is not more than 100K. The second thing I find quite underrated is really studying the economic history of the world. This was one of those papers in economics that I myself did not enjoy, but I am really thankful that I had that rigor of my teachers of the course really drilling into me that what has happened before will happen again. And when you look at economic history, you realize that development happens in cycles. The world that's developed currently might go down and the developing world might come up, and that happens again and again and again. Of course, this might not happen in our lifetime, but it might also happen during our lifetime. In fact, some people will tell you that this trend has already started. I don't want to predict on politics and economics. That's not why I'm here. But economic history does teach you that what has happened before, there's a high likelihood that it will happen again in a slightly different form. Which brings me to the third thing that I believe is extremely underrated, talking about economic cycles. Economic cycles typically happen from anywhere between 4 to 5 years to 10 years. Typically, in banking, we consider an economic cycle as a rule of thumb as 7 years, but that is give or take. Economic cycles means that what is overvalued now will very soon, as the cycle goes down, be undervalued, and that is when most people choose to get out of the market. There's a huge amount of fear in the market. People try to get out. This is true for the stock markets for sure, but this is also true for the real estate market or the commodities market. Name any market, people generally try and get out of the market when they are fearful or there's uncertainty looming over. However, generally speaking, this is a cycle of about 5 to 10 years. And if you are brave, you might just get the stock market at a discount during these periods of time. And the time to sell is when the stock markets are at a high. Of course, if you are a long-term investor, buy when you can and then sell off at a point when you are ready for retirement or you are ready to cash in that investment. The fourth thing that I find extremely underrated is starting your investment journey early on than later on in your life. No one can deny the magic or the math of compounding, which is why it makes a lot of sense to get into the market as early as you can and try spend time in the market rather than timing the market. And if there are parents who are listening to this, start investing for your children probably as soon as they are born, because that is the best gift that you could give to them. You could invest in things like a junior ISA if you are in the UK. So start investing really early on, even if it's just £50, £100, whatever it is, and let compounding and time do the magic. The next thing I find underrated is diversification. And I'll be honest, I'm guilty of falling for this as well. Of course, the first piece of diversification that you want to consider is within your investment portfolio. Let's just start with the stock portfolio. Of course, none of this is financial advice. If you need financial advice, I'm not a financial advisor. Please go speak to someone who's regulated and who can help you in your specific situation. I'm just sharing what my situation is, and I find myself overexposed to the West, which is why I personally am looking at avenues as to how I can invest more in the emerging markets. But this doesn't only apply to geographies, this also applies to your entire portfolio. I personally am definitely overexposed to stocks and shares. Even though I don't think that buying a house for yourself as your primary residence is always the best idea or the best investment, it's probably not even an investment unless you are downsizing. What I do believe in is that you have to have a mix of assets in your portfolio. So I do consider real estate as an asset when you are not using that as your primary residence in your portfolio. I also consider other alternatives. businesses if you understand them. I also consider commodities. For example, the metals, gold, silver, etc. would be a really good place to hold some money in. I'm not suggesting you hold all your money in one versus the other. Mix around. Some people would say businesses are a real investment. If you understand businesses that are not listed onto the markets, that might be an asset class for you. There are several other asset classes like that. I'm not going to go into crypto because it's not very well regulated, but I do know a lot of people who have made money out of that. I do believe in the underlying technology. I just don't understand enough to be investing in that. So at this point, crypto for me would be speculation. But if you understand it, if you can go through the white papers that outline blockchain and that entire industry, and you feel strongly positive about a particular company, and I think in the crypto world, especially if you know the founders, if you know who the CEO of that company is, could be a really interesting place. But please don't put all your money in that because there are a lot of crypto-related scams. For example, I was approached by a bunch of people who were involved in this OneCoin scam. And apparently this lady used to work in one of the top consulting houses in the world in McKinsey's. Point of the matter is that you really want to diversify your investment portfolio. However, you also want to diversify your income, which is one of the things that I get really worried about when it comes to single earner households, because I always feel, what if that person loses their job or loses a part of their business or something happens to them? And I personally have gone through situations where I have seen my senior partners getting laid off, and I realized at that point that the higher your income, the more the reliance on your income for your family. And if you get laid off, and if you haven't been saving and investing enough, or if you don't have an emergency fund, etc., you might fall into the trap of being overexposed to one income, which is why it's a conscious decision on our part about being in multiple income households, and also a conscious decision on my part about diversifying my sources of income, which is why I have a day job and I have a couple of businesses now. And the last extremely underrated thing that is not talked about often enough is increasing your income. The more you can earn, the more you can save and spend. So that leads you to a guilt-free lifestyle. You get to earn more, you get to enjoy the money, but also you get to save more. And I don't think enough people are paying attention to this, but this is exactly the kind of stuff that we talk about inside the Six Figure Club, where I help professionals increase their salary, increase their income if they are in 9-to-5 day jobs. And if you are interested, I will leave a link in the description box below. Come join us inside the club. I will also leave a link for a salary negotiation guide in the description box below. That is completely free. Come and grab that. Increase your salary, because in my humble opinion, it is one of the best ways to actually earn more, save more, spend more, and live an abundantly successful life. That's all I had for you today. Did you find any of this surprising? Did you find any of this shocking? If you did, let me know in the comments below. I love going through your comments. Even if you don't agree with me, I'm fine, because this is a community where we get to engage, agree, disagree, but I love you all. So thank you for watching. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do consider subscribing. It does help the channel out a lot. And if you enjoyed this video, you might enjoy something like this or this, and I'll see you the next time. Bye.